How's everyone doing today? Recording is now in progress, so you're all on record for anything you say today. How's everyone doing? Come off of mute. Let's see those cameras. Tell me how you are doing. Welcome to GPS, Your Way to Success. We're going to talk about mastering your one thing and how to live a big life. But as we kind of wait for a second, let everyone jump on this afternoon. What's something awesome going on in your guys' worlds? Let's make sure those cameras actually work and like you actually can hear me.
I'll jump in there, Jordan. You know, I'm never afraid to talk, my friend. Something going on really great in my business is just through some Facebook networking, meeting people at a family reunion. I'm picking up probably a double buy in Park City referral. So really stoked about that. Just doing the thing and talking to the people. And next thing you know, good things happen.
I was going to say, what is it they say? Get in the way for good things to happen.
Yeah, just show up for opportunity to run into you.
Love it. So 2 buyers in Park City. Coach Dave is no longer going to be working here in about 6 months. He's just going to be retired skiing every day.
Oh man, you got 4 more years of me before I take off to the next thing. 4 more years.
4 more years. All right. What else is going on in your guys' worlds? What's something exciting, something cool happening? It's Veterans Day, so thank you to all of our veterans who have served, are serving, or future veterans who will serve. We're grateful for your service, and happy Veterans Day to everyone else. What else is going well in your world? You can drop it in the chat box. You can come off of mute and say it. Whatever works.
I got my 3rd vet in a row buying a house from me. Holy cow, where did they come from?
That's awesome. Working with veterans to help them buy homes, get into a place of their own. Very exciting. Well, I am Jordan Larson. I am the Regional Technology Director for the state of Utah. I am also a licensed CE instructor. That's why you're getting those 2 CE credits today after this class. So make sure you are registered for this class. Gordon is going to be taking attendance for us. I do need to make sure you are registered in order for me to give you that CE credit. I am not going to remember if you were on this call or not when I go to bank those credits tonight. So make sure that Gordon has your name, your email, and your license number so that we can give you that CE credit, unless you just came to see my face, which I doubt most of that is the case. So make sure you drop your email, license number, and full legal name that is attached to your license in the chat for Gordon if you are not registered and on our list. Fair enough? Today's agenda. I want to know why you guys are here, what you came to learn today. We're going to talk about the 6 myths of productivity. We're going to talk about the process of goal setting to the now. We're then going to help you complete your GPS, talk about 411 and time blocking, and then accountability to win. Sound like a fair plan to everyone? Okay, so step 1, why are you here? I want some of you guys to come off of mute, or you can drop it in the chat box. What did you show up to for this class today to learn? What do you hope to take away from it? What's the one thing that you're hoping you can change in your life or in your business to be more successful or achieve something that you haven't in the past? Or maybe you just showed up because it said 2 hours of CE. Yeah, Coach Dave.
I mean, I don't want to monopolize the time. So Tuesday in our team meeting in our office, we had Josh Stern in talking about how he built the business he built. And it kind of turned into where he and I were having a little discussion. He asked me a couple of direct questions. And in thinking about my business and my skill set, I was with him every step of the way until he started talking about the 411 GPS and how he used that to build his business. And alarm bells went off in my head that this is the one thing that my business as an agent, as a coach, as a lot of things really needs some attention. So I'm here to humble myself before the 411 gods and learn a whole lot.
Humble yourself before the 411 gods. I love it. That's huge, right? I think that is the biggest difference between those who succeed at an average or a mediocre level and those who succeed at a super high level is their ability to leverage and use their time the most effectively. I don't know about any of you, but I don't think I've never been given the key to having 30 hours in a 24-hour day. Maybe some of you have that trick, and if you do, I would love to hear it. I would be more than happy to learn that trick, but I'm guessing that you don't. So in that case, if everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, then let's dive in and figure out a little bit why some people are more effective and accomplish more in the same 24 hours. Some of the other comments in the chat was to master time blocking. We're definitely going to talk about that, talk about tips, tricks, and strategies around time blocking. Want to learn more about the GPS for my own business and help people on my team better. Get more clear on my why. The 411 tracking it up keeps so much time, you quit doing it. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to make that a priority in your time and make it an effective use of time. Awesome. Is there anything else you guys are hoping to get out of today? Now is your chance to tell me as the instructor what we're talking about today. If you don't speak now, then I get to teach about whatever I want. We'll cover what we talked about already, and then the rest is up to me. Time blocking sounds like a big one. Does anyone ever struggle with time blocking? Is that ever like a hard thing for any of you guys, or is it you all have it mastered? I think it's a struggle for pretty much everybody, but it is a huge, huge opportunity to learn. And if you can master time blocking, you can master pretty much anything you want in this life. Awesome. We're going to start by watching this little video with Mr. GK.
See, one of the cool things that I learned, and this was later in life, is that we get to pick our models, our truths, and our prophets. You get to decide what you think is the truth, and you get to decide the models that you follow, and you get to decide who you're going to listen to. Okay? At the end of the day, what we want to do, what I want you to do, is I want you to reduce your assumptions and your thoughts to an operating model. Now that sounds a little, very, I would say, people would call that overthinking a little bit. I don't think so. If you're trying to have the best life possible, you're going to need to operate from a fundamental truth and a fundamental model. Whether it be about your religion, whether it be about your health, whether it be about your personal relationships, whether it be how you raise your dog. Okay? If you want the best dog possible, then decide what you believe about how dogs behave and how you help dogs behave the way they should behave or you need them to behave to have the best relationship with them. And then get a model for that and then follow the dadgum model. Okay? I will assure you that everything, each of you I'm sure has a cell phone of some kind. That little piece of hardware exists because someone developed some fundamental truths about how science works that can create that, and then they created models on how to research it to figure it out, and then they created models on how to build it. They don't walk into the store or the manufacturing plant every day and say, well, need to make some more cell phones today. How will we do it? Yes or no? Yes or no? No. That sounds stupid, doesn't it? So they come up with a fundamental way to do it, and how do they know that it's going to work almost every time? Because they follow the process, right? And they follow the same process, yes or no? Absolutely. There you go. Okay. I'm simply calling those truths and models. Now, a lot of people, again, immediately turn me off. Some of you are turning me off right now, and that's okay because it's your life. Okay? But I'm telling you right now, if you want the most out of it, leave your mind open and recognize that there are a handful of things that you can do, just a few things, that can radically change your life and separate you from everybody else. It's not complicated. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time today talking, and your head's going to spin, trust me, it will. I'm going to fill it up, okay? And I don't expect you to get it all. I expect you to revisit this material the rest of your life, okay? But it's actually simpler than you think. But we have to go to the complicated in order for me to work backwards to get you to buy into how simple it's going to be, That's the cool thing. I'm out of college, and I got to tell you, I chuckled like, a kid who's been locked inside the candy store when I discovered, to my surprise, that success and achievement was a lot easier than I had imagined. Then I really chuckled when I realized that most people fight it. They fight it. They are their own worst enemy. People walk around and say, well, I'm successful because what I do. I will guarantee you most people are where they are in spite of what they do. In other words, we're all born enabled to greatness. And to not achieve that means you've done something to get in the way of yourself. Does that make sense? Now, again, at your age, I had no idea what I'd be talking about. So if you don't, I get that too.
So what stood out to you in that video? This is where you get to come off of mute and chat. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. What stood out to you? What did Gary say? What's something that stuck out to you that you feel like you could apply in your own life?
I can't remember his exact verbiage, but something to the effect of, it only takes a few things or a few decisions to completely change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, a few small decisions can absolutely change massive things in your life, right?
If we look at it through the lens of, like you said, we get in our own way, and not, I'm so great I've achieved this, but how have I goofed up and only achieved this, is very humbling. And I also feel it's very empowering, because it helps you get back to that more fundamental truth of what you believe and what your morals are.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the most powerful statements I've ever heard is most people are not successful because of who they are and what they do, but they are successful in spite of who they are and what they do. When you start looking at your life with that lens and you start asking yourself, okay, where am I getting in my own way and holding myself back from greater levels of achievement and greater opportunities? What models and systems have I adopted into my own life that are maybe preventing me from achieving my greatest potential? Then that's where it becomes a huge opportunity for you to get clarity and get real and go make a change. Carl said it's not complicated. Success is not complicated. It's just success truly is simple. Life naturally wants to become more complicated, right? So we're going to dive into that model of how you can time block and use your time the most effectively. Is there anything else that stood out to you guys from that video? Okay. First step is we're going to talk about the 6 myths of productivity. So step 1 is everything matters equally. Do any of you believe that? Does everything in your life matter at the same level?
No.
No, not at all. So that's the myth, right? So the question you need to ask yourself is, what is your one thing? It's the whole idea of the 80-20 principle. Can anyone explain that 80-20 principle to me? Does anyone want to take a whack at it? Coach Dave.
Sorry, I lost the mute button. The 80-20 principle, that 20% of our efforts are going to give us 80% of our results. Also, the inverse of that is true, where 80% of our efforts are only going to generate 20% of our results. So my takeaway from that is we need to understand what our 20% is, and then buy a house there and live in that 20% neighborhood for the rest of your career.
I love that. Buy a house in your 20% neighborhood and live there. There's a really fun story about this. Does that make sense to everyone? The idea that 20% of your efforts or 20% of the things you will do or the tasks on the list of a real estate agent will yield 80% of your results or 80% of your income. So 20% of the activities you will do in a day as an agent will yield 80% of your income. And 80% of the activities you'll do in a day will only yield 20% of your income. There's a really cool story about an agent in Keller Williams a few years ago. He was working very long hours and kind of his life was his job. Does that resonate with anyone that you live, eat, breathe, and sleep your job as a real estate agent? You never really get a break. Anyone ever been in that world, even if it's just for small moments? Well, he looked up one day and realized, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't continue to play this way. He was making about $1 million a year in gross commission income. He said, cool, if the 80-20 principle truly applies like we claim it does, then I'm going to put it to the test. So he took 20% of his income and handed it to his assistant, $200,000, and said, cool, here's $200,000. Here's my list of all of my 80% tasks. Everything that falls under 80%. Him and his assistant got very clear on what his 20% activities were and what his 80% activities were. He handed that $200,000 a year to his assistant and said, you can go hire one person for $200,000. You can hire 4 people for $50,000 a year. I don't care. All of these tasks on this list that are considered my 80%, I can never do again. You hire whoever you need to in whatever capacities in order to take care of all of these tasks, and I will take care of the 20%. He expected that 12 months later, after his assistant had hired those people and they took all of his 80% tasks away, that he would make about $800,000 and invest the $200,000 into assistant and leverage and make the same amount of money. Well, what do you think happened when he spent 100% of his time in that 20% activities? His net, after paying all of his assistants more than just $200,000 in a year, he net about 1.5 million. So it's that whole idea of exponential growth, because everything does not matter equally. So productivity myth number 1 is focus on what matters most and focus on your one thing. So you take that to-do list of everything you could and should do in a day and boil that down to what you should do. One of my favorite questions to ask when I look at all the things that I have on my to-do list and all the different things people want from me and that I need to get done and accomplish in a day, and I ask myself, cool, if I could only do one of those things today, if I could only check one item off my to-do list today, what would be the most important one to check off? As a real estate agent, what do you think should be at the top of that list every single day?
Lead gen.
Lead generate, prospecting, absolutely. Because we know there's a very simple rule in real estate. If you're not lead generating, you're not going to be in business very long. So I always look at that. Look at your tasks of all the important things you need to do in a day and then boil that down into a success list. Obviously, you're probably not going to have to lead generate all day, every day. There's going to be other things that are going to come up. But if you check that box off first, it will make everything else in your life easier or unnecessary for you to even put mental capacity into thinking about it. Is that fair enough?
Yep.
Cool. So boil that down from your 20%, and then you get down to even smaller until you get to truly your one thing. What is that lead domino that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? Fun story in my own life about getting down to that lead domino for me in my health area of life. I set a big goal in 2020 that in 2021, I wanted to get very fit. I want a 6-pack. My goal is to have a 6-pack by the end of this year. I'm very close. I learned very quickly after hiring a health coach and putting together my plan and getting very specific on what I eat, what I work out, what workouts I'm doing, all those different things. I learned very quickly that for me, the lead domino is I just have to get to bed by 10 p.m. Now, most people, when I tell them that, go, how does going to bed at 10 p.m. lead to you getting a 6-pack? Like that, those two dots do not connect. But when I explain it this way, I know for me, if I get to bed by 10 p.m., I will get up in the morning around 5:30 or 6 in the morning. If I get up then, I will go to the gym. If I go to the gym, I'll eat healthier because I come home from the gym and I have my protein shake every morning. If I have the protein shake in the morning, then I'm on track and I feel good and I make better decisions about what I eat all day long, which leads to me then going to bed at an earlier time, being more productive that next morning and hitting the gym again. So it's that whole cycle of that lead domino. If I can knock that over first, everything else falls into place. Productivity myth number 2, multitasking. Does anyone in the room feel like they're a good multitasker? Would anyone be proud to say, like, I kill it at multitasking?
Yeah.
No takers?
It's a myth.
It's a myth. I like it, Sean. It's funny because I taught this class a few weeks ago in the South Valley Market Center, and I had a couple people raise their hand. They're like, oh no, I'm a good multitasker. And we played the game. And if you write down, and we can play this game if you guys want, but if you write down the numbers 1 through 26 and the letters A through Z, and you alternate between number and letter, so 1A, 2B, 3C, it took them an average of 58 seconds to go through the whole alphabet. We then played the same game, but instead of doing it 1A, 2B, 3C, they wrote 1 through 26 and then A through Z. It took them an average of 32 seconds. So that's the whole idea of multitasking, right? If I'm multitasking, I'm working on one activity, and then some interruption comes up, or you get that got a minute. Does anyone ever get those, or is that just me? You then have to reorient, focus on whatever the distraction was or the other thing you're focusing on, then switch it back and go back to your primary activity. It takes you significantly more time than if you just focused on that primary work and then focused on the next thing. Because there's that switch cost. When you interrupt a workflow, it takes your mind, and you have to slow down and take the time to reorient and focus on something else. So building a bunker and building a situation where you can eliminate every potential distraction possible will make you much more effective with your time. How many of you guys have some sort of bunker or system in place to eliminate distractions in your work? What are some things you guys have done to eliminate those distractions?
Mike Ferry gave me one. It was to tie one of those surfboard things around your ankle and tie it to your desk.
There you go. Leash yourself to your desk. That's an option. That's a new one. I've never heard that before. What are some other ways you guys remove distractions from your world?
I'm horrible at it, but I think Dean was saying he puts basically the blurred glass over his office door.
Frost your office door.
So I'm borrowing his.
I like that one.
Lock the door.
One of my favorites is closing my door, locking it, and putting a sign on it that says, I'm working on my one thing. You can come find me at this time.
I don't know how many people are from my office here, so I don't want to share my secrets, but I will sometimes turn off my office lights when I'm in there. So when they just look down, is Coach Dave in his office? Oh, the lights are off. He's not there.
Turning off your lights, that's a big one.
Sometimes I'll take like a cooking timer, and I'll just turn it on for however long I think it'll take me to finish that task, so that it's kind of ticking in the background and it keeps me focused on task.
That's a huge one. Create some sort of timer that just is like, hey, for the next 20 minutes, I can't do anything but this. And it's just that constant subtle reminder. This is my one thing right now. I love that.
Another thought around the timer, kind of the way my brain interpreted that, is if it's like, okay, I can know that I can make phone calls for an hour and I should be able to make 20 dials and have 4 conversations, right? And when that timer goes off at the end of the hour, if you've got 3 dials and 1 conversation, it really is an immediate come face to face with, what did I just do with the last hour, right? I really like that immediate accountability piece in there that feels like it could be really present.
It makes you very clear on how much you're spending your time doing and what you're doing with it. That's huge. I love it. Anything else? Any other tips, tricks, ideas you guys leverage? Okay. A disciplined life. Do any of you believe that's true? A balanced life, a work-life balance. Has anyone ever heard that? Is that true? Well, we would argue that it's a myth. So discipline, it's not about having a disciplined life, it's about forming habits, right? So if you create the habits in your life that lead to you living your best life, it's only a matter of the discipline needed until the habit is formed. Studies show that on average, it's about 66 days. There's lots of different, some people say 3 weeks, some people say it takes 9 months to form a habit. Depending on the habit, it's all of the above are probably true. But on average, it takes about 66 days to get into the cadence of things that you have a consistent habit of doing something. Let me ask you this. How many of you had to think about getting up and brushing your teeth before going to work today? How many of you had to make the conscious decision, I need to go brush my teeth. Here's how I'm going to do it. I need to brush for this long. I need this toothpaste. How many of you thought about the process of brushing your teeth? Or how many of it is just a total habit that like you don't leave the house before you brush your teeth?
It's automatic.
It's totally automatic. So the idea is pick those different areas of your life that you want to turn the auto button on. Where in your life do you need to build habits that will lead to your success in those top 20% activities, for example? How many of you have a habit around lead generation? And where could you go build those habits into your day and into your week, into your month and into your year? So that it was just automatic. When I show up to the office, I start lead generating. Food for thought. Willpower is always on will call. Any of you ever heard that? Can you just will yourself to do anything at any time of the day? For those of you with health goals, let me ask you this. How many of you are likely to eat a crumble cookie at 9 a.m.? If you have a goal to lose a certain amount of weight or to get a certain body type or whatever it is, if you have a health goal and that crumble cookie would be a distraction or pulling you away from achieving your goal, how many of you have the willpower to say yes or say no to that cookie at 9 a.m.? I would say most of us, right? What about at 9 p.m.? Long, stressful day, work's been a mess, you had 3 deals blowing up and fires put out everywhere and you're exhausted. You get home, you've been gone all day long. It's 9 p.m. You're tired, you're frustrated, and your friend sent you crumble cookies and they're sitting on your porch. Warm, melty chocolate chips. How easy is it to say no then?
Not as easy.
Not as easy. Willpower is like a gas tank, right? So this graph, many of you have probably heard this story before, but they did a study several years ago on parole boards and how likely you were to get parole if you were in prison based on the time of day your parole hearing was. And so they did a study and they said if you were one of the first parole hearings in the morning, you had just over a 60% chance of getting a positive outcome from that parole hearing and getting parole. If you went before the board right before their morning break, you had almost a 0% chance. Then if you were heard right after the morning break, when they'd come back refreshed and they had the ability, they'd kind of been able to take a break and take a deep breath and then came back, you had roughly about a 60% chance. It then went down from there. You got a 25% chance by the afternoon break or lunchtime. Then if you came before the parole board or right after their break, you had about a 60% chance again. That quickly dropped off from the then to the end of the day to about 0% chance. So that's the whole idea of willpower is not on will call. So building in breaks throughout your day, that goes back to the whole idea of the timer, is if you have the ability to build in some of those breaks and have very hyper-focused activities for 20 to 30 minutes, take a quick break to refresh and re-energize yourself, go for a quick walk, get up, move around. It then brings you back in with more energy to focus and be more productive in shorter sprints. Has anyone ever experienced that in their own lives? So find out what works for you and what system that works. Some people can go an hour at a time. Some people can only run in 15-minute bursts. I'm pretty sure Gen Z, because of TikTok, has about a 15-second concentration ability before they're like off on the next bunny trail. So that's going to be interesting. Heaven help society. But that's the whole idea, right? So find out how that works for you and how you can best use your willpower, because it is like a gas tank and it is going to run out of fuel if you don't refuel it. A balanced life. That's where that whole idea of work-life balance comes into play. Does anyone believe that a balanced life is ever achievable? I hate to burst your bubble, but I'm going to tell you right now it's not true. The rise of the work-life balance myth. So if you in 1986 to 1996 was very minimal. 32 times in any sort of publication or any sort of news article in that 10-year period was the idea of work-life balance talked about. By 2011, it was named in some sort of article or press release 1,452 times. Can anyone tell me what happened right around the early 2000s? What do you think caused the whole movement of work-life balance?
The internet, cell phones.
And also, we had a great real estate. We had a great recession in 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm. So it went backwards. Less people were working. But it's interesting because with the advent of cell phones, email, the internet, I now could be accessible anywhere at any time. So the idea of leaving work at work and going home and being home became a little foggy. So the idea of work-life balance, it's a hard one to believe because there's no way to perfectly balance those two things. Success is found in the extremes. So the whole idea is you got to counterbalance, right? So you may spend some days working extra long hours. You may be like Coach Carl and flying out to Utah every Monday to teach Bold, but then he gets to take his Friday off and go spend it with his wife. Him and Karen are going shopping and going out and relaxing and getting a massage together, whatever that is. Is that balanced or is that counterbalanced? So that's the whole idea. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Cool. Myth number 6, big is bad. Have any of you ever heard that myth before? Oh, you shouldn't want to be super wealthy. You shouldn't want a big life. That's bad.
Big is good.
Big is great. Has anyone ever heard that myth though?
Thinking big is bad is something we tell ourselves. Like, you hang out in the gym, Jordan, right? Like, how many people are like, well, I don't want to get too big, so I'm not going to go real hard today. It's like, you have no idea how hard it is to go big. Let's not use that as a roadblock right now.
Absolutely. The big is bad is people are afraid of their potential. Like Gary said in that video a few minutes ago, every human on earth, I'm a firm believer, has massive potential to change the world within them. If you don't do that in your lifetime, it's because you failed to live up to your full potential. You failed to step into your light and your power and go live that out. The whole idea of big versus small, how many of you like to set small, really manageable goals? Like, I'm going to sell 6 houses in 2022. Is that an achievable goal?
Yep.
The average realtor sells 6 houses in a year. So that's very doable. Now, if I set the goal, I want to go sell 60 homes in a year, what's the difference?
Stretch.
Stretching. Pushing, it's stretching. I'm really having to push and go do things differently. What changed about my mindset? If I set the goal of 6, well, I can pretty much fall backwards into 6 transactions without really trying, right? If my goal is 60, what do I have to do?
You have to do differently. You have to learn and grow and find new people to hang out with and new people to practice with, and you have to change.
You've got to fundamentally change the way you look at the game, right? It's no longer, I'm just going to kind of hang out and hopefully close 6 transactions this year. It becomes a game of, okay, cool. Like, I got to have a plan and a strategy, and this is going to be really tough. And there's probably going to be days I want to cry, but I'm still going to do it. Now, here's my favorite part about thinking with really big goals and really big plans is if I set the goal of 60 and I don't achieve my goal and I only get 95% of the way there, did I still beat my goal of 6?
100%.
So if you're stretching for a far out big audacious, hairy goal, is it still going to push you to stretch much farther than if you just set a small, safe goal?
Yep. Got to get uncomfortable.
Get uncomfortable and get in the way for good things to happen. So what's a big, hairy, audacious goal one of you guys have for 2022?
Do better than 2021.
Okay. What does that look like for you?
I think I have to plan ahead, to set up my goals, and just be committed.
Yeah. So what did you do in 2021?
I worked some, but there was a lot of personal things that happened in my life that I won't go into, that have really, it was not a distraction, it was just like one problem after another that I was able to solve most of them.
Cool.
So I'm back on track.
Love it. So that's what I would look at and say, okay, like if I want to grow, like there's incremental growth, right? I can say, okay, I closed 15 deals this year, so 20s moving forward. And there's the idea, if any of you have taken some classes at Keller Williams, and sometimes, especially in the previous Bold, I remember they would challenge you. They'd say, write down your goal for the next 12 months of what you want to do in production. And then they would look at you and say, okay, cool. You wrote down, I want to make $100,000, or I want to make $200,000. And they'd say, double it. Do any of you remember doing that experience, that process and going through doubling your goal? And do you remember the emotion it caused within you?
Yep.
It's pretty crazy. I remember my first year ever taking Bold. They challenged us to do that. They said, double your goal. And I'd written down $150,000. I was like, that's a lot of money. I was 22 at the time. I was like, holy cow, that's like more than I've ever made. That's more than I've ever thought I would make in the next 10 years. And then they said, double it. And I went, holy shit, what did I just do? But it challenged me to think in a completely different way and say, okay, I had a plan and a strategy in my mind of how I could get to 150,000 GCI. 300,000, that plan's out the window. I've got to do completely different activities, completely different strategies, and I've got to work smarter because working harder is not going to be able to double it. So think big. I'm challenging you, whatever your goal is, ask yourself, is it a goal that's going to cause you to stretch and push and ask bigger questions? Fair enough. Now's the time to jump into the goal setting to the now process. Does anyone have any ahas, thoughts from that last section? The 6 myths of productivity.
I like what you said about at just at the very end, is my goal going to cause me to stretch and push? Because for me, if I set a goal if I take my goal for 2022 and double it, I'm not even going to try. I just have such a hard time with goals if I feel like I can't control it. And there's probably some mindset issues there as well, but I don't know if it, I don't know. Anyways, but I can go and look at my goal and say, okay, is this a comfortable goal? It's certainly more than what I did in 2021, but is it going to cause me to stretch and push? I can adjust that. I don't think I'm going to take my goal and double it, but
for sure.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of doubling it is not necessarily that you have to actually go double it, but it's just like, hey, let's set a number that's big enough and scary enough that it makes you pause and think, okay, how can I go accomplish this? How would I have to change how I show up in the world in order to make that happen? There's another rule I love. I heard this a few months ago, and there's the two kind of sides of a goal, right? So in my mind, whenever you're setting a goal around income or transactions or whatever you want that number to be that you're tracking, there's your promise goal and your prayer goal. So the idea of a promise goal is like, that's my commitment, like bare minimum. Like if I'm paying the bills and like funding my life, like bare minimum, I have to make X. Like that is do or die. If I don't make X amount of money this year, like it's not worth me continuing in real estate. So that's your promise goal. Like that is the standard. Like I am going to make X amount of money. Like there is no, like I don't get to go home if I don't make X amount of money every year. And then there's the prayer goal, which is kind of that aspirational, like make you stretch and push to go live that bigger life. So there's the kind of the two sides of that coin, if that makes sense. So there's like your standard of like anything less than this is unacceptable. And then there's that prayer goal of that's what you go and celebrate. That's what you would talk about. That's what you would tell people you're going to do. And that's what you plan around. So the idea of those two goals is I'm going to budget and plan out my expenses and my vacations and my trips and my life around my promise goal. And I'm going to go dream about and go try and push to create a bigger life with that prayer goal. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to budget around my goal of my prayer goal of 2022, which is like the stretching. Like, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to achieve that goal, but I'm going to find a way and I'm going to work my ass off to get there. If I budget around that goal and not my promise goal, and I go take out the new car loan, buy the new house based on my income at the top level, it might get really dicey. So that's why I budget around my promise goal of like, this is do or die. And then my prayer goal is where I stretch that difference, is where you get to go build and fund a really fun life. Thoughts on that so far? Everyone with me still? Cool. Well, we're going to dive into goal setting to the now. So the whole process of goal setting to the now is the idea of, how many of you have ever been asked the question, likely in an interview, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Or those someday goals, right? Does anyone have any of those crazy, audacious someday goals where you're like, man, someday I would love to do X or own X or be X, but you're not really sure when or how you're going to get there? But you have that big vision for your life. Like, someday I want to be the next Gary Kelly. Someday I want to own a yacht. Someday I want to fly on vacations in a private jet. What's some of your someday goals? Someday I'm going to pay off my parents' house.
This is actually one that's in the works for me. It's within 5 years. My girlfriend and I are developing a retreat center in New Mexico to step away from our current careers and take that coaching, teaching, and education to the next level.
Very cool. So that's why you gave us your 4-year notice.
What was that?
I said, so that's why you gave us your 4-year notice earlier.
I gave you my 4-year notice earlier. Yeah. I have 4 years left.
There you go. So the idea is, when you're setting big goals for your life and you're envisioning, like, what would your dream life look like? Or as Bold would teach, what does your life by design look like? Bucket list that, right? Like, I want you to wave the magic wand and you can live any life you want. If you write it down on a piece of paper, it's going to come true someday for you. Like, think as big and crazy as you want. Then once you have that bucket list, I want you to then take those items on your bucket list. If it's fly to Africa and hike Kilimanjaro, if it's to own a private jet, if it's to have a yacht bigger than Jeff Bezos, if it's to go to space, if it's to make $1 million in 1 year, if it's to own half the state of Utah, I don't know what it is. Whatever that big goal inside of you is, as you write those bucket list ideas down, I want you to then go through and number them. What are the goals you could achieve next year, or that's important to you to achieve next year? What are the ones that are probably 3 years out for you, and what are the ones that are 5 years out? So maybe the center and the retreat center for you, Coach Dave, is a 5-year goal. Maybe it's a 3-year goal. But I want you to pick that one goal of whatever it is. Maybe it's, to go backpacking through Europe for a year. Maybe it's to own a private jet. Maybe it's to be able to quit and never have to work again. Whatever that big goal is for you, you then pick your one thing. So what is the 1 year goal for you? 2022, I'm going to fund my life and be able to go do X by creating X amount of income. To me, it all comes back to what you make, right? So the idea is, like, if I want to own that private jet, I probably have to make X amount of money. I've been told by some really wealthy people in my world before that you have to have about a $50 million net worth in order to make a private jet make sense. Financially, it's about a $50 million net worth to be at a point that you're like, okay, a private jet probably makes sense to own. So if that's your goal, then probably, okay, if my goal is a $50 million net worth, what net worth would I have to be at by the end of 2022 in order to be at a $50 million net worth 5 years from now or 10 years from now? But we're breaking that goal down backwards. So if I want to be there in 5 years, where do I need to be in 3 years? Where would I need to be next year? And then we're going to break that down to the one thing. Many of you probably have an income goal for your life and your business in 2022. So that's an easy one to start with, right? So we're going to go in and pick what's that lead domino. What's the one thing I can do such by doing it? Everything else will become easier or unnecessary in the journey to making $250,000 next year. And that $250,000 is going to fund my perfect life because I'm going to be able to take everyone on my team to Disneyland. Or I'm going to be able to go on a wine tour through wine country in Northern California and visit Coach Parole. Whatever that one thing is, right? I'm a firm believer that we all set income goals, but there needs to be a why behind that. And we need to attach what that money is going to do for us, because money is good for the good it can do, right? So getting very clear on that. And then it's all about completing your GPS. So once we have our 1 year goal for 2022, it's about breaking that down backwards. So if my one thing goal is to make $250,000 next year, that's going to fund me being able to buy investment properties and go on trips and do X, Y, and Z. Then what are my 3 priorities that are going to enable me in order to achieve that one thing goal? Have any of you ever written a GPS before? Raise a hand, drop a yes in the chat box. How many of you feel comfortable and confident in achieving that, in writing out your GPS and getting clarity on your one thing goal? Kinda, sorta, maybe. Okay.
That's why I'm here, is to get that clarity.
Get clarity.
I realize it's been a tool that I know about. I just don't know how to get the most out of it. And
So this is from the one thing. This is kind of their process, or kind of their template for a one thing GPS. So if your goal is $250,000 for the year, whatever your goal is, that's going to go on that top line, right? So my one thing for the year is to accomplish X, make X amount of money, close X amount of deals, whatever it is, right? I'm a firm believer that we like to set SMART goals. So we need a date by that. So depending on what your goal is with that money, or what your income for 2022 is going to fund, you may have to set a certain date for it. So if my goal is to make $250,000 next year in GCI, then my one thing is to close, maybe it's 32 deals by November 31st or November 30th. There's not a 31st in November. Now, why do I say that? If my goal is to make $250,000 in 2022, I have to have the right amount of deals under contract before the end of 2022 so they can close and I can get paid in 2022, right? So that's where I get very clear and put a timeline on when I'm going to achieve that goal. And then your 3 priorities are the 3 kind of main strategies or buckets you're going to use in order to fund and drive that one thing goal. We write out a GPS and it stays in a binder. We don't look at it again. It needs to be in front of me every day. Otherwise, it's like a pilot flying without instruments or a flight plan. Very powerful. So here's one of my rules. I love that you brought that up, Carl. Coach Carl said the biggest problem for all of us agents is that we write out our GPS and we stick it in our desk drawer, or we stick it in a binder and we never look at it. One of my favorite things about GPS is it's one page, right? You don't have to flip it over. You don't have to scroll down. Your GPS should be printed and put somewhere that you look at every day. So I post it, like if you were to come to my office, you'll see it sitting right in front of me, right next to my computer. So every day I walk into the office and sit down, what do I look at? So the GPS almost becomes your kind of guideline and your barrier for what's most important. If I'm sitting scrolling through Facebook at work and I glance over and see my GPS, what does that instantly do for me? It pulls me back into reality and helps me refocus and say, okay, what's my 20%? What's going to help me achieve my big goal, my big why? Building a dream board is another great idea to help do that. But the idea of a GPS is you've got your one thing at the top. I always like to make it a specific, very specific goal with a very specific date. So I'm going to have X amount of deals under contract or closed by this date. And then priority number one is, in order to achieve my goal of blank, if it's an amount of transactions, maybe you're going to execute your 36 touch, or your database could be your priority number one, right? So we can do the math. For every 10 people in your database on a consistent 36 touch, you should close at least one deal. So if your goal is to close 30 deals next year, you need at least 300 people in your database on a consistently executed 36 touch. So if I know, okay, cool, like I've got 200 people in my database right now, in order to achieve my goal, I need 300, then priority number one may be to highly execute a 36 touch to my database. Priority number two is probably going to be somewhere around growing my database, right? And then the strategies, are those 5 strategies, the tactics, tips, and tricks you're going to use in order to accomplish that goal. Now, I had a coach challenge me a couple of years ago, and this changed the way I looked at my GPS ever since then. She said, if your one thing goal is X, what if you wrote your GPS and your business plan out in such a way that if you only achieved priority number one, you would still achieve your one thing goal? So that I have 3 priorities that each on their own, if I fully execute and achieve them, would achieve my goal on their own. So if my goal is to close 30 deals and I know that I can get about 10, for every 10 people in my database, I can get about 1 closing, then my goal is to highly execute a 36 touch to 300 people in my database. And I'm going to do that through Facebook targeted ads, an email campaign. I'm going to make sure they're all tagged in command using the bold DTD D2D4. Is that right? I don't know what it is. D2D.
DTD2.
DTD2.
You
There
almost
we
had
go.
it.
There, I knew it was something.
I love it.
These and numbers.
Good.
We're close, right? So maybe that's one of my strategies. I'm going to have all 300 people in command tagged with the DTD2 so that I can make my calls every week, so that I know every person in my database is getting a personal phone call from me. My other strategy could be that I'm going to implement Kimber Walton out of the South Valley office has built out a 36 touch smart plan so that they get all those emails from me. It's a set it and forget. Anyone like those?
That's pretty good.
Super. That's like the easy button of the easy buttons. Even my other strategy is my other strategy is I'm going to host 4 client events throughout the year. That's the easiest way to call your database. So if that was my one priority, was my database, then priority number 2 could be internet lead generation. I'm going to generate enough leads that I can close 30 deals from internet lead generation. So how do I need to do that? Okay, well, I've got to have a budget around it. I may have to learn some ideas and tips and tricks around it. I'm probably going to need a solid strategy around converting those internet leads into closings. I may need to hire a coach to help me figure out different tips and strategies around converting internet leads at a higher level. So that's the idea that your priority number 2, again, I'm building it out in such a way that if my one thing goal is to close 30 deals, I've got priority number 1, that if I fully execute, I'm going to close 30 deals from my database. Priority number 2 is going to be internet lead generation. I'm going to close 30 deals from that. And then priority number 3 is maybe your referral network. I'm going to network with agents when I go to family reunion, when I go to mega camp. I'm going to network with them online and through the KW referral network in command. And I'm going to receive and close at least 30 referral transactions during 2022. That's not that hard. But do you see how that breaks down? So if priority number 3, if my priority is, to close 30 deals through referral networks, I probably need to talk to at least 30 referral agents outside of Utah, or outside of my target market at least. I'm probably going to need to market to them in some way, add value to them, and have a way of collecting those referrals and making it a solid experience to close that referral deal. Do you see the power in the way we just established that GPS? How many of you are great at getting 80% of the way there on any sort of task or given thing that you're working on? How many of you are great at getting it to 80%, not to 100? Most of us. I'm the same way. I'm great at getting things to an 8. It's getting it to that home run that's always the struggle for me.
Yep.
But what did we just accomplish by making all 3 of our priorities, giving each of those priorities the ability to take us to a home run? If I do 80% on each of those 3, if I accomplish 80% of priority 1, 80% of priority 2, and 80% of priority 3, what did I just do?
Pretty good.
Well, and if priority 1 could get me 30 transactions on its own, and I get 80% of that, so what's 80% of 30?
What?
24.
24. Okay, so 24 if I close 24 transactions through my database, which is my priority number 1, if I get 24 transactions through internet lead generation, which was my priority number 2, and I get 24 closed transactions from referral agents, how many deals did I just close? A few more than 30?
Yep, definitely.
Did I blow my goal out of the water? So that's the whole idea, is if you can build your GPS in such a way and stick to it and truly follow it, we take the variables out of the equation. It's a guarantee that we're going to at least hit our goal, if not blow it out of the water. And if we're really cool and we get it to a 9.5 or a 10 on each of those areas, I just went and closed 90 deals. Would any of you have a problem closing more than your goal in 2022?
Mm.
Would anyone have a problem making too much money?
Nope.
Fair
Nope.
enough.
Hey, quick question for you, Jordan.
Yes.
Okay, so as the team lead, and I don't have a big team, I have a very, very, very small team. Let's say my goal was 50 transactions in 2022.
Okay.
And so I've got my priorities: execute 36 touch, I've got online lead gen, and then let's say my third one was finding hidden sellers, or whatever. How should my team's GPS match up with mine? So let's just take an admin and an ISA role. People that work for me, not buyer's agents that work for themselves, because that would be different, but people that work for me, should my admin's 1-year goal match mine in numbers, and then their priorities are how they support mine? Isn't that then me giving that to them?
When they're a paid employee, you're likely going to give them the goal, right?
Okay.
Because if I'm being hired to do a job, you're paying me to do X, Y, and Z. It's not really my decision what I do. Like if I showed up, if I was your admin and I showed up and I'm like, cool, like I know you really want me to make sure you have like a 10 plus transaction experience, but I really just want to go like build out really cool emails. Would that be a win-win?
Okay. So how do we coach that admin into owning their GPS? Compensation, some sort of, if we do this, then this.
So bonus structures, compensations is a huge piece of that, and helping them buy into the overall goal of the team. So a lot of admin have profitability goals.
Right.
If you help me achieve X, you also get Y.
Okay. And then maybe like a sit down consultation of, okay, priority 1 is to execute on our 36 touch. Here's all the parts that you own of that. Let's talk about it. What's working, what's not, kind of that type of a thing. And then we
Bingo.
Build their
So I would
GPS.
sit down, if it were me, if I were building out my GPS and my goal is to close 50 transactions. And so that's the idea of a GPS. It's your one-page business plan. If you turn it on its side, it becomes your org chart. So I own the number one thing goal of we're closing 50 transactions this year. My admin is going to own my 36 touch. So priority number one, if that's a 36 touch, my admin owns that, right? So then that becomes their GPS. Is okay, so my goal is this year is to generate 50 transactions through a phenomenal 36 touch. I'm going to do that by studying the market and having a very highly effective newsletter each month. I'm going to give my maker a list of the people he's calling each week, whatever their strategies are around ensuring that that 36 touch is executed at the highest level.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so I would sit down, if it were me, I would sit down with my admin and say, cool, here's our goal. Here's kind of the areas of that you own. How do you feel like you can best effectively make that happen?
Yeah.
And coach them through building out their GPS so that they own it. Authorship is ownership. Does that answer that question for you?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Awesome. What other thoughts, questions, concerns do you guys have around drafting your GPS?
Great.
Okay. So once you've got a GPS and you've got your one-page business plan and we're super clear on what we're going to go accomplish in 2022, this is where the rubber meets the road. I'm a firm believer that you can write out a perfect GPS, but if it doesn't exist on your calendar, it does not exist in your life. And that's where the 411 and the GPS and the calendar and time blocking comes in. So I'm a firm believer you should fill out your 411 every month. When I look at my calendar and when I look at my life, I always sit down and say, okay, I time block 3 things. I time block my time off. So I can remove any day of the month that I'm not working. Like personally, I don't work Sundays. I probably don't work holidays. Like I'm probably not going to work Christmas Day. I don't know about you guys. Maybe some of you are out prospecting and door knocking on Christmas morning. You're definitely going to get a lot of people home. Personally, family comes first. I'd rather be with my family than door knocking. So time block your time off. Then I go through and time block my one thing. So when am I going to accomplish those most important tasks on my GPS? When am I going to go make the phone calls for my prospecting, my lead generation, my database calls? When am I going to meet with my admin or whatever it is to ensure that those things are happening if it's not me doing it? And then I time block my planning time. So I have 2 different kind of things. There's 3 different types of planning I do in my world, and this is what I would suggest for everyone. Before the year starts, I sit down and I have my annual goal setting retreat where I go through and I set my goals for 2022. I did it last week. I sat down and spent the entire day going through and writing out my bucket list and determining, okay, in every area of the 7 areas of life, what do I want to accomplish in 2022? I then move that in and create a GPS for each one of those areas of life. And then move that to my time blocked plan. My second type of planning is my monthly plan. So before the month starts, so the very end of December, the very end of January, the very end of February, and so on and so forth, I'm planning out what my next month looks like. I'm pulling up a month at a glance calendar, and I'm time blocking and making sure I've crossed off the days I won't be working. I've time blocked the times I'm going to be in trainings or different events and things that I won't be actively prospecting and working on my one thing. So I can then boil it down and determine, okay, if we've got 30 days in January, well, after weekends and training events and everything else going on in January, there's really only, let's say, 16 days I'm actually actively working on or in my business. Okay, so I've got 16 days and I've got to talk to, if I have 300 people in my database, I've got to talk to a third of them. So I have 100 phone calls over 16 days. So I'm getting very clear on what I need to be doing each of those days. And then I have a weekly time blocking event or a weekly planning time, which I like to do every Sunday before the week starts. I sit down for 30 minutes and review my calendar that week and make sure that what's on my calendar reflects my goals in my GPS. So going back to that 411, every month I'm writing down, okay, what is my annual goal? Why do you think I write that down every single month?
Remind yourself of it.
It's very hard to forget your goals day in and day out when you're in the trenches and when you're frustrated and you're tired and you're exhausted and you don't have the mental energy. If you've continually written that down and keep buying into it, then ask myself the question, cool, if my goal is to achieve X, if my goal is to close 30 transactions in 2022, how many transactions do I need to get under contract to close in January? 30 divided by 12. Come on, guys, what's the math?
And it gets a little more complicated than that because we need to close them this year. So we probably ought to have them under contract by start of fourth quarter just to be safe. So we really have 9 months. So 30 divided by 9 is like 4, I think.
Okay.
If we're not using decimals.
That's a great point. So if I want to achieve the goal, I have to have them close in 2022, right? So I probably got to have them under contract, I would say at least by the end of November. So that gives you 9-10 months to go close those deals. So I probably need to get more under contract. I always like to front load, right? So I'm looking at this. Here's the best part about planning this out in advance, though. If I know my goal is to close 4 deals a month, which leads to 30 deals in 2022, we're still in November. So can I tee up 4 closings for January right now? What would your life look like if you came out the gates and after the first month of the year, you were already ahead of your goals? How many of you like ketchup? It's not my favorite condiment. I'm not going to lie. I'd rather be ahead of the game than playing catch up. But I promise you, if you want to go swim in the catch up and hang out in that game, it's exhausting. But if you plan ahead, you don't have to live there. So that's where I break it down and say, okay, each month. So if my goal is to achieve 30 transactions in 2022, I need to close 4 deals in January. So if my goal is to close 4 deals in January, I probably need to spend week 1 of January doing a lot of prospecting. So my goals in week 1 of January I may be way heavier in the prospecting and lead generation side. And then week 2 and week 3, my goals may be a little less because I'm doing less prospecting. Now I'm starting to service more of that business. But I'm getting very purposeful about where I'm spending my time and what my one thing is.
Hey, Jordan, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In translating or in bringing the goals over from the GPS, that is one goal with priorities and strategies associated with it. We bring that over and now we're looking at 3 personal, 3 business goals. Where are these goals coming from?
So obviously, if you're writing out your 411 just for your business, it's going to be your 1 annual goal, your 1 monthly goal, and then your weekly goals. I live my life in that there's more than just business, right? So I set goals around my spirituality. I set goals around my impact, my health, my family and relationships, my business, all those types of things. So that's where you're going to see if you have multiple goals in different areas of life, those are all going to show up on 141. Does that make sense?
So we can take multiple GPS and put them on a single 411. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. So that's the idea, right? Is if I'm going to set different goals, so the GPS is going to be specific to that area of life. But then when I bring it to the 411, that's where it's starting to boil down into my calendar. I don't have 7 different calendars for 7 areas of life. I only have one me. So all of those areas of life are going to start to mix together onto one calendar. But does that make sense on how you fill out a 411? So I've got my annual goal, and then I'm breaking that down. Okay, if I want to be there in 12 months, if I want to sit down on December 31st of 2022 and say, cool, I've closed 30 transactions and I've been paid on them, What do I need to do in January in order to ensure that happens? It might be around ensuring I have my database organized. It might be ensuring that I've got my lead generation, internet leads set up. I may have time blocked on my calendar to go run 3 Facebook ads. Call my database, some of those different things. Fair enough? So you're going to time block those different times. Here's an idea of what a perfect calendar would look like. And one of the objections I always get from people is, cool, like I've time blocked all of my time and I'm super clear on what I'm doing. What happens when something shows up? What happens when life shows up? That's why if you'll notice, what does it say at 1 p.m. almost every single day? Can anyone see that?
Yeah, you eat lunch with somebody.
Lunch
Sometimes.
is at 12. At 1 o'clock, though, what am I doing?
It says whirlwind,
Whirlwind.
fire management.
Do any of you ever have fires come up in your world? Do deals go to hell and life blows up and shit happens?
Yeah.
Is that a very easy way for you to time block and plan for that to happen and be able to take care of that? You'll
Do you
also
move things
notice,
around? Do you move things around if, say, you have a client that can only see houses in the morning? Do you just kind of shift things around?
absolutely. So the 2 rules of time blocking for me is when you time block something, treat it like an appointment. So if I time block that I'm going to lead generate at 9 a.m. and I show up to the office at 9 a.m. and my friend wants to sit and chit chat and talk about the Cowboys game last night, what am I doing? I'm saying that's super cool. I'd love to talk about that at lunch. I have to go. I have an appointment. Treat your time blocks like an appointment. I don't care if it's a listing appointment or your lead generation time block. If you have that appointment, treat it like an appointment with yourself. So if someone calls me and I have time blocked to be like today, I was time blocked to teach this class right now. If people call me and text me right now, what do they get? Nothing. I will call them back when I have time. Because right now, this is my one thing. If you treat your lead generation and your activities with yourself the same way, you'll never have to worry about getting them done. And so to that question, though, is my other rule with that is, so first rule of time blocking is treat every time block like an appointment. If I had an appointment with Gary Keller, do you think I would miss that? Probably not. So treat every time block you have that way. Rule number 2 is if you erase, you must replace. So if I have a client that can only see homes in the morning and I have time blocked to do my lead generation in the morning and show homes in the afternoon, cool, then I'll swap them. So I'll go show homes in the morning and then do my lead generation in the afternoon. You'll also notice I time blocked, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 listing appointments or buyer consultations every week. How likely is it that I'm going to do 7 listing or buyer consultations every week?
I believe in you.
I mean, realistically, if my goal is to close 30 deals a year, like I probably don't need to be doing 28 listing or buyer consultations every month, unless I have really, really low conversion ratios. Which, if that's the case, we need to get you a coach. But the idea is I'm telling the universe I'm going to fill these appointments. Now, what happens if I get to Monday at noon and it's lunchtime and I don't have a listing or buyer consultation in the afternoon? Well, there's 3 hours of time block that I can then go leverage to take care of other 80% activities. I can continue to lead generate. I can go take care of other activities. I can work on my 36 touch. I can write the emails I need for that. Because likely, again, I'm telling the universe I want my time to go to my top 20%. When there's moments that don't get filled with my top 20% activities, that's when I can take care of the 80%. Does that make sense? But I'm putting it out there to the universe. I would prefer that this time go to my top 20% activities. Any questions on a time blocked calendar? You'll also notice, what do I do every morning?
I was just going to ask about that.
Eat, pray, love, right? Have any of you ever heard of the 5 areas of energy for the millionaire real estate agent? Coach Dave, would you share those with us?
I've heard of them. I don't have them memorized. It's physical, spiritual, emotional. I don't recall. I don't recall. Sorry, Jordan.
I'm going to grab them because I don't have them all memorized, but they are super good. So my idea is I call it eat, pray, love. It's loving on the people around me in the morning. It's sharing that gratitude. It's meditating. It's praying or connecting with whatever higher source power you believe in. Let me see where it is. So that's the idea, right? I'm exercising for physical energy. I'm eating healthy. I'm preparing myself mentally, physically, emotionally for the day to be able to take on whatever shows up in my life. I call it eat, pray, love. Some people call it whatever else. But the 5 areas of energy for the millionaire real estate agent are, if I can find it. Let me see. Gosh, where is it? Now it's in here. I want to share these with you guys because they're super powerful. Where is it? I almost pulled this out before the class started, and then I was like, it's fine. Trust your intuition, guys.
What's it called? Maybe it can be Googled.
The 5 energy areas of the millionaire real estate agent. See if someone can beat me to it.
Mm.
Can you Google faster than Jordan can look through a book?
I got it.
Okay. Okay, Andrew, let's hear them.
1, meditate and pray, spiritual energy. 2, exercise and eat, physical energy. 3, hug, kiss, and laugh, emotional energy. 4, plan and calendar, mental energy. 5, lead generate, business energy, all by 11 a.m. every day.
So if you did all of those things before 11 a.m. every day, how would your life look?
What was number 3 again?
Hug, kiss, and laugh, emotional energy.
Okay.
I'll copy and paste it in the notes.
So that's where the eat, pray, love part comes in for me is I get up, I exercise, I eat a healthy breakfast for that physical energy in my body. I play with my dog in the morning because that's my laugh, kiss, hug. I live alone, so it's just me and the pup. But maybe your family, maybe your kids, maybe a significant other, whoever you're with. And then you lead generate.
How is your lead generation by 11 a.m.? Because I always thought it would be better in the afternoons just because most people are working.
Absolutely. So that's always my rule of thumb, right? Is everyone always asks, I personally lead generate in the morning because that's when I'll get it done. If you told me to lead generate at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm like, fat chance. It's happy hour. If you will do it at 4 p.m., awesome. So these are all guidelines. Again, I'm a firm believer in take the model that works and fit it into your life the way your life works. So if you take the kids to school at 9 a.m. and you start lead generating at 2 p.m., cool. Like that's awesome. Make it fit your life, but just make sure you're getting it done. Is that fair enough? So that's the time block calendar. What questions, thoughts, concerns do you guys have around time blocking? Where are the limiting beliefs showing up for you?
I always had a really hard time blocking until a coach said if I can hit my time block 80% of the week, I've succeeded, and that actually enabled me to do it. Now you got to make sure you're hitting the most important parts, obviously, but that just kind of felt liberating to me because I had tried to time block so many times, and the concept of if you erase it, you replace it sometimes just didn't fit for that week. But if I can hit it 80% of the time, that's better than throwing it out the window and never doing it.
I'm a firm believer in just do it and then do it better, which is 100% across that same idea, right? If you can be 80% effective with your time blocking, and life's still going to show up. And that's why, like, I strive to time block in a way that I have the ability to flex and move that around, but that I at least am telling my most important activities when they're going to happen, and I accomplish those, generally speaking, when I've time blocked them or I move them to a different time block, I'm winning. If you are 80% effective in time blocking, you are 1,000 times more effective than the average person. Because I can promise you right now, if you don't have a plan for where you're going to spend your time, somebody else does. What other thoughts do you guys have on that? Okay. Well, the final piece of it is create accountability. So without accountability, your journey down the path of mastery will be cut short the moment you encounter a challenge. Without it, you won't figure out how to break through the ceilings of achievement you'll hit along the way. Accountable people absorb setbacks and keep going. Accountable people persevere through problems and keep pushing forward. Accountable people are results-oriented and never defend actions, skill levels, models, systems, or relationships that just aren't getting the job done. In other words, if you do what you've always done, you will get what you've always gotten. I'm a firm believer in having accountability. So my challenge to you is write out your GPS and then find an accountability partner. It may be a peer, it may be a coach in your office, it could be your team leader, it could be your productivity coach. You could ask an ALC member to hold you accountable. Or if you really want to take that next leap in your business, I would highly encourage anyone to explore hiring a MAPS business coach. A MAPS mastery coach will hold you accountable at a level and coach you through your limiting beliefs and challenges in a way that no one else will be able to. I promise you that when you do find that accountability, you show someone your GPS and you turn in your 411 to somebody every month and every week review it with them, it will massively change the way you show up in the world. Thoughts on that? Does anyone have any experiences they'd like to share where they've gotten accountability in a certain area of life and it's changed things for them? Okay.
You know, I'm always happy to share, Jordan. As I stepped into the coaching role, like nobody's born a coach, right? We just say, hey, I want to help people and do it at a higher level. And so as I stepped into that role, I started working with MAPS Mastery Coach. And through that process has helped me continually improve this part of my skill and improve this part of my skill. And really the conversation with my MAPS coach this week was, what's the one thing through the end of the year that was, hey, let's take on this GPS 411 piece so I can not only be a better agent, but also a better coach and better show up in all those different ways.
I love it. Having someone that challenges the way you think and is able to see that bigger picture and pull you through some of the tough times, it will absolutely change your world. Your coach.
Accountability is the scariest part because it's when you got to commit.
Yeah.
You can't get out of it, especially if you put something, serious on the line. Like Gary Keller, he told a story once about how he basically had an arrangement with somebody and it was kind of like, he used the analogy of like, would you, if you don't finish this, would you cut your arm off? Like, if your arm was the cost of not finishing this, would you cut your arm off? And so, and basically like his point was that everything that you commit to should be that level of commitment, where if you don't finish it, you'll cut your arm off. But obviously people aren't going to go cutting their arms off. But like, if you put something, kind of pony up with something and say, okay, I'm going to put like X amount of money in this account, and that account immediately gets like released to you, or that, that money is, in somebody else's hands and they get to keep it. If you don't show up, like, then you'll show up. Sometimes you have to like make the stakes really high to make yourself do it.
I've heard lots of different tactics around accountability. I've had people that have asked me to be that accountability partner, and they've written a check to an entity or an organization that they absolutely despise. And if they didn't achieve their goal, I had to put that check in the mail. How often do you think somebody who absolutely despises the NAR or the NRA, how often do you think they wanted me to put that $1,000 check in the mail for the NRA? It's pretty motivating. Had people that if they didn't achieve their goal, they had to eat cat food in front of team meeting. Any of you ever cracked open a can of cat food? It smells disgusting. I definitely wouldn't want to eat it. At the end of the day, the idea, it all boils down to this. If you're interested, you'll do what comes easy. If you're committed, you will do whatever it takes. So get very clear on your goals, get very clear on the plan of how you're going to achieve them. And then until you achieve your one thing, or until you knock down that lead domino, nothing else matters. Find that accountability and have someone jump into the trenches with you and help push you towards your goals, and you will achieve massive things in this life. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. If there's no other ahas, questions, or concerns, I will let you go. I hope you have an amazing Thursday and finish out an awesome week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Quick question. I saw that you're also teaching this live in December.
Yes.
It's going to be fundamentally the same course?
Yeah, it'll be the same course.
Okay.
In person.
Fantastic. I may take it again just for the refresher.
We'd love to have you.